There are moments in football, pivotal plays or championship victories that burn themselves into our collective memory. Yet sometimes the stories that linger longest are not found on the field beneath the roar of the crowd, but instead unfold in the quiet, shadowed corners of it. These are the tales of talent unfulfilled, of promise derailed, and of the profound, often tragic, consequences of choices made away from the bright lights. We are going to explore some of these stories, examining how the intoxicating pull of the game can sometimes collide with the harsh realities of life, leaving behind a legacy far different from what was once imagined. If you enjoy stepping back into these football stories with me, feel free to like the video and subscribe for more documentaries like this. Take Najee Davenport, for example, a running back whose powerful runs once captivated fans. His NFL journey included an impressive Super Bowl win with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where his physical, downhill running style made him a dependable backfield contributor. However, Davenport carried a peculiar shadow from his college days, an incident that, despite his professional achievements, often resurfaced in sports media and even late-night comedy circuits. While a student at the University of Miami, Davenport was arrested following an incident at Barry University. Police reports detailed a disturbing scene. Davenport reportedly broke into a woman's dorm room. The woman later awoke to discover Davenport squatting in her closet. He then defecated in her laundry hamper, an act that indelibly marked his public image. This bizarre incident, more than his actual on-field talent, became the defining narrative for many who followed his career, overshadowing his ability to perform at the highest level of professional football. Then there is Sam Hurd, an undrafted wide receiver from Northern Illinois who carved out a niche in the NFL through sheer grit and determination. Hurd became a valued special teams player and an occasional pass catcher for the Dallas Cowboys, earning a reputation as a hard worker. His perseverance seemed to pay off handsomely in 2011 when he signed a substantial $5 million contract with the Chicago Bears, signaling a new chapter in his career. However, that promising new beginning quickly unraveled. Shortly after signing with the Bears, Hurd was arrested outside a Chicago steakhouse by undercover federal agents. The charge was severe, attempting to purchase and distribute cocaine and marijuana. Authorities alleged that Hurd was not merely dabbling, but planned to establish a large-scale drug distribution operation. Court documents indicated a staggering ambition, revealing Hurd intended to buy between 5 and 10 kilograms of cocaine weekly, alongside 1,000 pounds of marijuana per week. These quantities were intended for distribution across the entire Chicago area. Hurd even claimed he had other NFL players lined up as potential buyers for the drugs, a chilling detail that spoke to the reach he envisioned for his illicit enterprise. Following his arrest, Hurd offered minimal cooperation with authorities and, crucially, did not implicate any of his teammates. Ultimately, he pleaded guilty to drug trafficking conspiracy and was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. A stark reminder that federal drug trafficking charges in the United States carry significant penalties, including lengthy prison sentences and substantial fines, depending on the type and quantity of the controlled substance involved. Malik McDowell arrived in the NFL with immense expectations, hailed as a dominant defensive force from Michigan State. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighing 300 pounds, he possessed rare athleticism for someone of his size, making him a highly sought-after prospect. The Seattle Seahawks recognized his potential, selecting McDowell early in the second round of the 2017 NFL Draft, expecting him to anchor their defensive line for years to come. Yet, McDowell never played a single down for the Seattle Seahawks. Weeks after being drafted, his promising career was tragically derailed by a serious ATV accident. This accident left him with a concussion and facial injuries, effectively ending his rookie season before it began. McDowell was placed on the reserve list, and in 2018, Seattle released him without him ever appearing in a game. The years following his release were punctuated by a series of concerning arrests. He was apprehended for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest at a gas station, and later for concealing stolen property after being found in possession of a stolen truck. The most alarming incident occurred in January 2022, when security cameras captured McDowell at a children's learning center in Florida. He was observed naked and was described as aggressive and incoherent by police reports. McDowell reportedly charged at officers upon their arrival, forcing them to subdue him with a taser before his arrest. Charges included public exposure, assaulting an officer, and resisting arrest, with body camera footage of the incident circulating publicly. painting a grim picture. In a brief moment of hope, McDowell had made a comeback with the Cleveland Browns in 2021, playing in 14 games and recording 3 sacks, a flash of the talent that had once promised so much. Our journey continues with Tamar Vanover, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in 1995 after showcasing his talents at Florida State. Vanover immediately made an impact as a dynamic kick returner, a testament to his explosive speed and vision. In his rookie season, he etched his name into NFL history by becoming the first player to win a game in overtime with a punt return touchdown, a moment of pure brilliance. However, Vanover also found himself entangled in a much darker narrative. In 2000, he was arrested and charged in connection with a sophisticated stolen car ring operating out of Florida. This elaborate operation smuggled stolen luxury cars to the Caribbean, utilizing fake documents, various middlemen, and shell companies for intricate money laundering schemes. Vanover played a significant role, helping to finance the operation using his NFL earnings and assisting in coordinating the logistics of the car ring. This was not Vanover's first brush with impropriety. He had previously admitted to accepting improper benefits while at Florida State, an admission that became part of a larger NCAA investigation involving other FSU players. The NCAA's rules regarding amateurism strictly prohibit college athletes from accepting improper benefits, which can include money, gifts, or other advantages not available to the general student body, with penalties ranging from individual player suspensions to program-wide sanctions. Ultimately, Vanover pleaded guilty to conspiracy to transport stolen vehicles and served 2 months in federal prison. The NFL suspended him due to his criminal conviction, and an attempted comeback in the CFL proved unsuccessful. Money laundering itself is the complex process of concealing the origins of illegally obtained money, typically by passing it through a complex sequence of banking transfers or commercial transactions, making it a serious federal offense. His story, like those of Davenport, Hurd, and McDowell, underscores how careers built on athletic brilliance can be irrevocably altered by choices made outside the lines of play. Story, like those of Davenport, Hurd, and McDowell, underscores how careers built on athletic brilliance can be irrevocably altered by choices made outside the lines of play. Tamar Vanover, submission of accepting improper benefits while at Florida State was a particularly jarring revelation for the NCAA, striking at the heart of its long-standing principle of amateurism. For decades, the NCAA's rules dictated that college athletes could not accept money, gifts, or other advantages not available to the general student body, all in an effort to maintain a level playing field and prevent undue influence. The idea was to ensure that student athletes were primarily students, not professionals. Vanover's candid confession was part of a broader NCAA investigation that implicated other FSU players, shining a harsh light on the often murky intersection of collegiate athletics and financial enticements. The penalties for such NCAA violations could range from individual player suspensions, as was the case for many involved, to program-wide sanctions such as bowl bans, scholarship reductions, or even vacating wins, measures intended to deter future infractions and uphold the integrity of college sports. For Vanover, his past indiscretions, though years removed from his NFL career, provided a glimpse into the pressures and temptations that can begin long before a player ever reaches the professional ranks. The severity of Sam Hurd's sentence, 15 years in federal prison, was a stark reminder of the gravity of drug trafficking charges in the United States. Federal law takes a particularly harsh stance on controlled substances, with penalties escalating significantly based on the type and quantity of the drug involved. For intending to purchase 5 to 10 kilograms of cocaine and 100 pounds of marijuana weekly, Hurd was facing the full force of federal sentencing guidelines. These guidelines are designed to impose lengthy prison sentences and substantial fines, often without the possibility of parole, reflecting society's zero-tolerance policy for large-scale drug distribution operations that fuel addiction and crime in communities. The fact that authorities alleged Hurd planned to establish a large-scale drug distribution operation across the Chicago area, and his purported claims of having other NFL players as potential buyers, painted a chilling picture of ambition gone tragically awry, leaving behind a career and a life in ruins. His minimal cooperation with authorities, though preventing the implication of teammates, did little to mitigate the severe consequences of his actions. While these stories illustrate a variety of pitfalls, from behavioral issues to organized crime, Perhaps no narrative more starkly embodies the self-destructive power of addiction in professional sports than that of Stanley Wilson Sr., a formidable running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Wilson possessed the kind of bruising talent that made him a vital component of his team's offense. His career, however, became tragically intertwined with the NFL's three-strike drug policy, a strict disciplinary measure designed to deter substance abuse among players. This policy mandated increasingly severe consequences for repeat offenders, ultimately leading to indefinite suspensions and permanent bans. Wilson's path hit rock bottom on the eve of Super Bowl XX in 1989. The Bengals were set to face the San Francisco 49ers, and Wilson was slated to be a key contributor. Yet, hours before the biggest game of his life, he was found in his hotel room in a cocaine-induced haze, having violated team rules and, more tragically, his own commitment to sobriety. This third strike effectively ended his NFL career on the spot, a devastating culmination of years of struggle with drug addiction. The image of the team having to move him from the hotel to a hospital, stripped of his uniform and his future, became one of the NFL's most enduring and heartbreaking cautionary tales. The Super Bowl incident was not an isolated event, but rather a public manifestation of a deeper, long-standing battle. Wilson's addiction led to a downward spiral of legal troubles, including multiple arrests for burglary and theft, often committed to support his drug habit. He cycled in and out of the penal system, each release followed by a relapse, each relapse deepening the hole he found himself in. His life became a revolving door of incarceration, punctuated by brief, often unsuccessful attempts at rehabilitation. In 1999, Wilson was sentenced to 22 years in prison after a third burglary conviction in California, marking what many believed would be the final chapter of his tragic story. His sentence reflected the state's three strikes law for repeat felony offenders, mirroring the NFL's own policy that had originally ended his career. He served 12 years of that sentence before being released, seemingly a changed man. Yet, the insidious grip of addiction proved too strong. Despite efforts to rebuild his life, Wilson tragically succumbed to health complications in November 2023, widely believed to be exacerbated by years of substance abuse. His story is a poignant reminder of how personal demons, left unchecked, can not only derail a promising career, but also consume an entire life, leaving behind a legacy of unfulfilled potential and profound regret. The NFL's three-strike drug policy, which became synonymous with his downfall, was a desperate measure to address a pervasive issue, but it ultimately highlighted the deeply personal and often intractable nature of addiction. The tales of these athletes, Davenport, Hurd, McDowell, Vanover, and Wilson, are varied in their specifics, but united in their underlying theme, the fragility of even the most celebrated careers when confronted with poor judgment, addiction, or criminal intent. Each player reached the pinnacle of their sport, only to find their public image, their financial stability, and their personal freedom irrevocably compromised. These aren't just stories of individual failure, but narratives that reflect broader societal challenges, including the intense scrutiny placed on public figures, the pervasive nature of illicit temptations, and the often insufficient support systems for young men suddenly thrust into immense wealth and fame. Their experiences serve as enduring lessons, not only for aspiring athletes, but for anyone who believes that talent alone is a shield against life's harsher realities. They demonstrate that while athletic prowess can open doors to incredible opportunities, it cannot insulate individuals from the consequences of their actions. The roar of the crowd, the multi-million-dollar contracts, and the adulation of fans fade quickly when integrity is lost, and the rule of law is broken. These narratives underscore the sobering truth that responsibility, character, and sound decision-making are as crucial to a lasting legacy as any touchdown, sack, or return. For every iconic play remembered on the field, there is often a quieter, more devastating story unfolding off it, reminding us that the human element, with all its complexities and frailties, remains the most unpredictable variable in the game of life. The bright lights of the NFL shine on many, illuminating talent and triumph, but sometimes they cast long, unsettling shadows over darker moments. In the world of professional football, a single decision can redefine a life, irrevocably altering not only a player's path, but also the lives of those around them. We continue our journey into these stories, where the roar of the crowd fades and the stark reality of human frailty takes center stage. Consider Josh Brent, a defensive tackle drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in 2010. He possessed an intimidating raw strength, and quickness for his considerable size, a physical marvel on the field. Yet, on a cold December night in 2012, his life took a catastrophic turn. Brent and his teammate, Jerry Brown, a promising linebacker on the Cowboys practice squad, were involved in a devastating incident in Dallas. Brown was a passenger in Brent's Mercedes, a journey that would tragically be his last. We know Brent had a prior arrest for driving under the influence, a warning sign that went unheeded. On this night, he was intoxicated, his blood alcohol level exceeding twice the legal limit. Around 2:20 in the morning, Brent lost control of the vehicle. It flipped and skidded violently across the road, a scene of immediate chaos and destruction. Brown was critically injured in the crash, while Brent, almost miraculously, sustained minimal harm. Emergency responders arrived quickly to find Brent had already pulled his friend from the wreckage, a desperate act in the face of unfolding tragedy. Despite immediate medical attention, Jerry Brown died at the hospital as a direct result of his injuries. The aftermath was swift and severe. Brent was arrested and charged with intoxication manslaughter, a term used when a person's reckless actions while intoxicated directly lead to the death of another individual, often in vehicular incidents. He faced a potential sentence of up to 20 years in prison. What followed was an extraordinary display of grace under unimaginable grief. At Brown's memorial service, Brown's mother publicly forgave Brent, offering him an embrace that stunned many. She later testified at Brent's trial, requesting leniency for the man who caused her son's death. Ultimately, Brent was sentenced to 180 days in jail and 10 years of probation. This punishment generated sharply divided public opinion. Some viewed it as far too lenient, while others pointed to the Brown family's wishes as a powerful mitigating factor. After serving his sentence, Brent briefly returned to the Cowboys, but the weight of the incident was too heavy. He retired from professional football shortly thereafter, his career truncated by a single, tragic choice. Then there is the story of Joe McKnight, a highly acclaimed high school football player, whose explosive talent often drew comparisons to the legendary Reggie Bush. He attended USC, a collegiate powerhouse, and was later drafted by the New York Jets. McKnight showed glimpses of his immense talent as a return man and runner in the NFL, but his career was plagued by injuries, inconsistency, and coaching changes. The potential was always there, flickering, but never fully igniting into consistent stardom. His journey ended abruptly and shockingly in December 2016, when McKnight was shot and killed in a road rage incident in Terrytown, Louisiana. He was just 28 years old at the time of his death. Witnesses reported a heated verbal altercation between McKnight and another driver, Ronald Gasser. At a traffic light, McKnight exited his car, a moment where confrontation escalated beyond words. Gasser, remaining in his vehicle, fired a gun, striking McKnight 3 times. The initial response from authorities caused widespread public outrage. Gasser was not immediately arrested. Concerns were instantly raised regarding racial dynamics, as McKnight was black and Gasser was white, feeding into a broader national conversation about justice and policing. The sheriff's office stated Gasser had not fled the scene and had handed over his weapon, citing these factors for the delay in his arrest. Eventually, Gasser was charged with manslaughter. At trial, Gasser claimed self-defense, alleging McKnight had made threats and reached into his car. Legally, the concept of self-defense generally requires a reasonable belief of imminent danger and the use of proportional force to repel that danger. A jury ultimately found Gasser guilty, rejecting his claim. In 2018, Gasser was sentenced to 30 years in prison for McKnight's death. Road rage incidents are characterized by aggressive or angry behavior exhibited by a driver, which can escalate into violence, a tragic truth that McKnight's story painfully illustrates. Demetrius DeBose, a team captain at Notre Dame, also saw his life end in a confrontational moment with law enforcement. He was a second-round NFL draft pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, carving out a professional career that concluded in the late 1990s. In July 1999, while in San Diego, DuBose found himself locked out of a rented house. Police responded to a reported break-in at the residence, setting in motion a chain of events that would end in tragedy. Officers claimed DuBose was acting irrationally and refused to comply with their commands. However, eyewitnesses described DuBose as confused but not aggressive. He was shirtless, unarmed, and according to later toxicology reports, under the influence of alcohol and recreational drugs. San Diego police officers shot DuBose 13 times during the incident, with 5 of those bullets striking him in the back. The public reaction to DuBois's death was significant, fueling demands for justice from his family, former teammates, and civil rights activists. Despite the public outcry, no charges were filed against the officers involved. The district attorney's office ruled the shooting justified, citing DuBois's resistance and perceived threat to the officers. This incident remains a profoundly controversial example of police-involved deaths, highlighting persistent issues of race, mental health, and the use of force within sports history and society at large. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures, while the 14th Amendment ensures due process and equal protection under the law. The principles often cited and debated in cases of alleged excessive force by police. The tragic stories continue, extending into realms of unthinkable cruelty. Sear Wood, a running back at Notre Dame, was known for his speed and vision on the field. He went undrafted in 2013, but had stints with several NFL teams, including the Texans, Patriots, Bills, and Raiders, always striving for his place in the league. Yet, it was away from the gridiron that Wood became embroiled in a horrifying case. In April 2019, Wood was arrested in Las Vegas, facing the gravest possible charge, first-degree murder. Authorities alleged Wood and his girlfriend were responsible for the death of her 5-year-old daughter. The child was found unresponsive in their apartment, a scene the police would later describe with chilling details. Investigators reported Wood subjected the child to intense physical workouts as punishment. These included grueling wall sits and sit-ups, which Wood described to authorities as necessary discipline. He explicitly told police the child needed to be toughened up. The autopsy, however, revealed a far darker reality. It documented severe injuries on the child's stomach, back, legs, and arms, clear evidence of repeated beating. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the abdomen. Wood denied the abuse allegations, but the evidence against him painted a stark picture, leaving him to face the prospect of life imprisonment. Child abuse, defined by the Department of Health and Human Services, includes any act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, or exploitation, or an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm to a child. This case sent shivers through the football community, a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist far from the stadium lights. Finally, we turn to Darren Sharper, a 5-time Pro Bowl safety and a Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints. After retiring from his illustrious playing career, Sharper transitioned into a role as an NFL Network analyst, a respected voice discussing the game he once dominated. His public image was one of success and authority. But between 2013 and 2014, a series of disturbing allegations began to surface against Sharper, allegations of drugging and assaulting women. The incident spanned multiple states, from California and Nevada to Arizona and Louisiana, revealing a chilling pattern. Investigators identified that Sharper allegedly met women at clubs or parties, then would offer them drinks laced with powerful sedatives such as Zolpidem, commonly known as Ambien, or even morphine. He would then wait for the women to lose consciousness before assaulting them. Sharper was ultimately charged in both federal and state courts, with authorities uncovering cases involving 9 women across 4 states. Prosecutors described Sharper as a serial predator, a man who allegedly exploited his fame and the trust it afforded him to commit heinous assaults. Facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of severe sentences, Sharper pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including rape and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. In 2016, Sharper was sentenced to 18 years in prison, a profound fall from grace for a once revered athlete. The NFL quickly and decisively distanced itself from Sharper, removing his name from highlight reels and broadcasts, effectively erasing his once certain path to Hall of Fame eligibility from public consideration. Sexual assault is a serious crime that involves any type of sexual activity or contact that happens without consent, and Sharper's case served as a stark, painful lesson in the corrosive power of betrayal and abuse of power. The shadow of tragedy, however, stretched far beyond the insidious crimes of individuals like Sharper, often encompassing accidents and escalating violence. One such deeply somber chapter belongs to Josh Brent, a formidable defensive tackle drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in 2010. Known for his raw strength and explosive quickness for a player of his size, Brent was a presence on the field, but it was off the field where his life took a devastating turn. On December 8, 2012, Brent and his teammate, Jerry Brown, found themselves embroiled in a fatal incident in Dallas. Brown, a promising linebacker on the Cowboys practice squad, was a passenger in Brent's Mercedes. The evening's events were tragically set against a backdrop of poor judgment. Brent, who already had a prior DUI arrest on his record, was driving while intoxicated, his blood alcohol content exceeding twice the legal limit. Around 2:02 a.m., Brent lost control of his vehicle, which flipped and skidded violently. Brown was critically injured in the crash, while Brent, remarkably, was mostly unharmed. Emergency responders quickly arrived at the scene, where Brent, in a desperate act, had managed to pull Brown from the wreckage. Despite these efforts, Jerry Brown died at the hospital as a result of his injuries. Brent was immediately arrested and charged with intoxication manslaughter, a legal term used when a person's reckless actions while intoxicated directly lead to the death of another individual. Most commonly in vehicular incidents, he faced a potential sentence of up to 20 years in prison, a stark consequence for his devastating actions. Yet, in an astonishing display of compassion that transcended the bounds of typical legal proceedings, Brown's mother, Stacey Jackson, publicly forgave Brent at her son's memorial service, embracing him in a moment that captured headlines and hearts. She later testified at Brent's trial, requesting leniency for the man who had inadvertently caused her son's death. Brent was ultimately sentenced to 180 days in jail and 10 years of probation. This punishment generated sharply divided public opinion. Some deemed it far too lenient for a life lost, while others referenced the profound wishes of the Brown family as a guiding factor. After serving his sentence, Brent briefly returned to the Cowboys before retiring from professional football shortly thereafter, his career forever overshadowed by the weight of that tragic night. The intersection of sports, fame, and violence also claimed Joe McKnight, a highly acclaimed high school football player whose electrifying speed and agility often drew comparisons to the legendary Reggie Bush. After attending USC, McKnight was drafted by the New York Jets, where he showed flashes of brilliance as a return specialist and runner, though his NFL career was ultimately marked by injuries, inconsistency, and coaching changes. His life was tragically cut short in December 2016 in a road rage incident in Terrytown, Louisiana. McKnight was just 28 years old at the time of his death. Witnesses reported a heated verbal altercation between McKnight and another driver, Ronald Gasser. The confrontation escalated rapidly at a traffic light, where McKnight exited his car. Gasser, who remained in his vehicle, then shot McKnight 3 times with a handgun. The initial aftermath sparked widespread public outrage, as Gasser was not immediately arrested. Concerns were vehemently raised regarding racial dynamics, given that McKnight was black and Gasser was white. The sheriff's office defended their initial actions, stating that Gasser had not fled the scene and had handed over his weapon. However, public pressure mounted, and Gasser was eventually charged with manslaughter. At trial, Gasser claimed self-defense, alleging that McKnight had made threats and reached into his car. The concept of self-defense in legal terms generally requires a reasonable belief of imminent danger and the use of proportional force to repel that danger, a claim the jury ultimately rejected. Gasser was found guilty, and in 2018, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison, a verdict that brought a measure of justice to McKnight's family but could not erase the senseless loss. Tragically, some confrontations with the law for former athletes have ended with fatal consequences, raising enduring questions about police conduct and mental health. Demetrius DuBose, a respected team captain at Notre Dame and a second-round NFL draft pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, saw his NFL career conclude in the late 1990s. In July 1999, while in San Diego, DuBose found himself in a bewildering and ultimately deadly situation when he locked himself out of a rented house. Police responded to a reported break-in at the residence. Officers claimed DuBose was acting irrationally and refused to comply with their commands. However, eyewitnesses painted a different picture, describing DuBose as confused but not aggressive. He was shirtless, unarmed, and according to later toxicology reports, under the influence of alcohol and recreational drugs. Despite this, San Diego police officers shot DuBose 13 times during the incident, with an alarming 5 of those bullets striking him in the back. The public reaction to DuBose's death was significant and intensely emotional, with demands for justice emanating from his family, former teammates, and civil rights activists. Yet, despite the outcry, no charges were filed against the officers involved. The district attorney's office ruled the shooting justified, citing DuBose's alleged resistance and perceived threat. This incident remains a deeply controversial example of police-involved deaths, highlighting persistent issues of race, mental health crises, and the use of force within the broader narrative of sports history and society at large. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures, while the 14th Amendment ensures due process and equal protection under the law, both often cited in cases of alleged excessive force by police, and forming the bedrock of the legal arguments surrounding such contentious incidents. The darkest corners of human behavior, unfortunately, can also manifest in unimaginable acts against the most vulnerable. Such was the case involving Sia Wood, a running back from Notre Dame known for his speed and vision. Undrafted in 2013, Wood had stints with several NFL teams, including the Texans, Patriots, Bills, and Raiders, chasing his professional dreams. In April 2019, however, Wood was arrested in Las Vegas on a charge that sent shockwaves through the sports world: first-degree murder. Authorities alleged that Wood and his girlfriend were responsible for the death of her 5-year-old daughter. The child was found unresponsive in their apartment, and investigators uncovered a horrifying pattern of abuse. They reported that Wood subjected the child to intense workouts as punishment, including wall sits and sit-ups, which he described to police as discipline. He chillingly stated that the child needed to be toughened up. The autopsy revealed severe injuries on the child's stomach, back, legs, and arms, indicative of repeated beatings. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the abdomen. Wood denied the abuse allegations, but faced the prospect of life imprisonment for these heinous acts. Child abuse, defined by the Department of Health and Human Services, includes any act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, or exploitation, or an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm to a child, a definition that sickeningly captured the alleged atrocities committed against this innocent life. These stories, spanning accidental deaths, acts of rage, tragic encounters with law enforcement, and horrifying abuse, paint a complex and often devastating picture of athletes entangled in the darker aspects of human experience. They serve as stark reminders that the heroes we laud on the field are, at their core, human beings susceptible to the same frailties, temptations, and societal dangers as anyone else. While their achievements bring joy and inspiration, their failures and tragic ends often lay bare the profound challenges that permeate society, leaving a lasting impact far beyond the final score. We have spoken of the glory, the strategy, and the sheer joy of football, but the game is also a mirror, reflecting humanity in its most challenging forms, revealing stories where personal demons clash with public personas and the very fabric of justice. Sometimes, the narratives that emerge are heartbreaking, even disturbing, revealing the dark underbelly that can exist beneath the bright lights of the stadium. Consider Mark Chmura, a tight end for the Green Bay Packers during the 1990s. He built a reputation on reliable hands and a deep connection with quarterback Brett Favre, earning 3 Pro Bowl selections and a Super Bowl 31 championship ring. Then, in the year 2000, Chmura, a married man with children, found himself at a post-prom party hosted by a high school student. A 17-year-old girl later accused him of sexual assaulting her in a bathroom at that very party. Chmura faced a charge of third-degree sexual assault, an offense that carried a potential prison sentence of up to 10 years, and his trial quickly garnered significant attention across Wisconsin. The defense centered on consent and the credibility of the accuser, while testimony delved into discussions about alcohol consumption, poor judgment, and the ambiguous circumstances of that night. Ultimately, a jury acquitted Chmura of all charges. However, despite the legal exoneration, his NFL career never fully recovered. The Packers released Chmura, and other teams were reluctant to sign him, wary of the potential negative media attention and the perception of the incident. Chmura later acknowledged that the incident was morally wrong, even if not criminal, stating he had brought embarrassment to his family and the Packers organization. This was a story where an acquittal did not erase the profound personal and professional fallout. Then there is the case of Kellen Winslow II, drafted 6th overall in 2004 by the Cleveland Browns. He was a generational talent, known for his athletic build, akin to a wide receiver, and a ferociously physical playstyle that promised greatness. His career was almost ended prematurely by a devastating motorcycle accident in 2005, yet the true tragedy emerged years later. In 2018, Winslow was arrested in California on charges of sexual assault. He was accused of targeting elderly women, including homeless individuals, with the assaults allegedly occurring in parking lots, mobile home communities, and even his own vehicle. Multiple women subsequently came forward with similar accusations, painting a deeply disturbing picture. In 2019, a jury found Winslow guilty of rape and other sex crimes, including indecent exposure and lewd conduct. In 2021, he received a sentence of 14 years in prison. Winslow and his attorney attributed his behavior, in part, to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a neurodegenerative disease linked to repeated head trauma. Doctors reported signs of frontal lobe damage in Winslow, highlighting the potential link between this disease, common in contact sports, and severe behavioral changes. We also remember Greg Hardy, a dominant pass rusher and Pro Bowl defensive end for the Carolina Panthers. His power and skill off the edge were undeniable. In 2014, Hardy was arrested and charged with assaulting his ex-girlfriend. The accuser alleged Hardy threw her onto a bed covered in firearms and threatened her life. A judge initially found him guilty, but the charges were later dropped when the accuser ceased cooperation. Often a difficult and heartbreaking aspect of domestic violence cases, where a pattern of abusive behavior seeks to gain or maintain power and control. Hardy consistently denied the allegations, but the Carolina Panthers released him after the incident. The Dallas Cowboys then made the controversial decision to sign Hardy, a move that drew widespread criticism. His on-field production declined with the Cowboys, and his public demeanor, including a perceived lack of remorse, sidelined altercations. And controversial public comments intensified public backlash. After his NFL career ended, Hardy pursued a career in mixed martial arts, but his record there remained inconsistent and controversy continued to follow him, a testament to how some legacies are indelibly marked by actions far beyond the playing field. The story of Alonzo Spellman, drafted 22nd overall by the Chicago Bears in 1992, speaks to another kind of inner struggle. He was an elite defensive end known for his explosiveness and raw talent. However, in 1998, teammates began to notice Spellman exhibiting erratic and paranoid behavior. This culminated in a psychotic episode on a teammate's front lawn, where police were called as he refused to leave, ranted incoherently, and threatened self-harm if sedated. Teammate Mike Singletary bravely intervened to calm him, eventually leading Spellman to accept help. Years later, in 2002, Spellman had another outburst during a Delta flight. He stripped shirtless, screamed about bombs, and threatened passengers, forcing the plane to make an emergency landing where he was arrested. It was later revealed that Spellman had bipolar disorder, a mental health condition characterized by significant mood swings, including emotional highs and lows, profoundly affecting energy, behavior, and judgment. He had consistently refused treatment for his condition, choosing to deny the diagnosis and medication for years. Spellman served 18 months in federal prison for the airline incident. Afterwards, he courageously spoke publicly about his condition, becoming an advocate for mental health awareness in the NFL, hoping his story could help others facing similar battles. Perhaps one of the most poignant tales of self-destruction belongs to Stanley Wilson Sr., a running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was recognized for his talent and explosiveness on the field, but battled a severe drug addiction, a pattern of harmful use of a substance for mood-altering purposes, leading to addiction and impairment. On January 21, 1989, the very night before Super Bowl 23 against the San Francisco 49ers, Wilson disappeared from a team meeting in Miami. Coaches found him hours later in a hotel bathroom, naked, shivering, and disoriented, having engaged in a cocaine binge. This was Wilson's third offense under the NFL's three-strike drug policy, leading to a lifetime ban from the league. The Bengals reportedly felt the emotional toll of Wilson's relapse, an event that some believe contributed to their 20-16 loss in Super Bowl 23. After his NFL ban, Wilson's substance abuse continued. He was arrested multiple times in the 1990s and early 2000s for burglary and drug-related offenses, serving time in prison, including a 22-year sentence issued in 2008. He had been a star player at the University of Oklahoma and a third-round NFL draft pick, but his legacy is now primarily associated with his addiction and its profound impact on his career and his team. Finally, we consider Charles Grant, a first-round draft pick from Georgia and a key defensive end for the New Orleans Saints, known for his power and intensity. In 2008, a fight outside a nightclub in Blakely, Georgia, Grant's hometown, tragically resulted in the death of Corinda Reed, a 23-year-old mother of two, from a stray bullet. Grant was indicted on involuntary manslaughter charges, accused of inciting or participating in the fight that led to the shooting. The NFL did not immediately suspend him. In 2010, Grant accepted a plea deal, an agreement between a prosecutor and defendant for a lesser charge or lighter sentence. He pleaded no contest to a lesser charge of public affray, a misdemeanor, avoiding jail time but paying a fine and settling a civil suit with the victim's family. Grant's career never fully recovered, with injuries and declining performance leading to him moving between teams. These stories, as varied and tragic as they are, remind us that the men we celebrate on Sundays carry burdens and challenges that extend far beyond the gridiron, sometimes with devastating consequences for themselves and others. These men, these figures of legend and infamy, show us that the field is only one arena of life. Their struggles with domestic violence, with mental health disorders like bipolar disorder, with substance use disorders, and even the shadow of conditions like chronic traumatic encephalopathy are not just footnotes. They are deeply human narratives, stark reminders of the pressures and personal battles that can define a life long after the final whistle blows. If you have any thoughts on these difficult but important stories, please do share them. To truly understand the weight and complexity of these narratives, it is essential to delve deeper into the nature of the challenges themselves, the conditions that often remain hidden behind statistics or sensational headlines. The spectrum of human experience, even within the seemingly monolithic world of professional sports, is vast and often fraught with unseen battles. Mental health disorders, for instance, are far more prevalent than many realize, and their impact can be devastating. Bipolar disorder, as seen in the struggles of Alonzo Spellman, is characterized by significant mood swings, including emotional highs known as mania or hypomania and profound lows characterized by depression. These shifts can dramatically affect a person's energy levels, behavior, and judgment, leading to impulsive actions, impaired decision-making, and strained relationships. The intense emotional fluctuations can make maintaining a stable life, let alone a demanding career, incredibly difficult, especially when coupled with a reluctance or inability to seek and adhere to treatment, as was initially the case with Spellman. The stigma surrounding mental illness can often prevent individuals, particularly those in high-profile, hypermasculine environments like professional football, from acknowledging their struggles and seeking necessary help. Equally destructive are substance use disorders, SUDs, a pattern of harmful use of any substance for mood-altering purposes, decay, which can quickly escalate to addiction and significantly impair health, work, and social life. Stanley Wilson Sr.'s tragic story serves as a stark illustration of how addiction can derail a promising career, costing not only personal success but also impacting teammates and organizational morale. SUDs are not simply a matter of weak will, they are complex brain diseases characterized by compulsive substance seeking and use. Despite harmful consequences, the biological changes in the brain caused by prolonged substance abuse make recovery incredibly challenging, often requiring intensive, long-term treatment and support. The pressures of fame, wealth, and the physical pain inherent in football can sometimes exacerbate vulnerabilities to substance abuse, making it a difficult cycle to break. Domestic violence, tragically exemplified by the accusations against Greg Hardy, represents a grave abuse of power and control within intimate relationships. According to the Department of Justice, it is defined as a pattern of abusive behavior, physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another. These acts of violence are not isolated incidents but part of a systemic pattern designed to intimidate, manipulate, and dominate. The ripple effects of domestic violence extend far beyond the direct victims, impacting families, communities, and public trust. When public figures are implicated, it shines a spotlight on an issue that often remains hidden in the shadows, forcing uncomfortable but necessary conversations about accountability and the societal factors that enable such abuse. Then there is the growing shadow of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a neurodegenerative disease linked to repetitive brain trauma, including both concussions and the countless subconcussive hits common in contact sports like football. Kellen Winslow II's defense, attributing his behavior in part to CTE and reported frontal lobe damage, brings this insidious condition to the forefront. CTE manifests with a range of debilitating symptoms such as memory loss, confusion, impaired judgment, aggression, depression, and, in severe cases, progressive dementia. For athletes whose brains are repeatedly subjected to trauma over years, the long-term consequences can profoundly alter personality, behavior, and cognitive function, sometimes leading to actions that are entirely uncharacteristic of the individual they once were. The increasing awareness of CTE forces a re-evaluation of player safety, post-career support, and the fundamental nature of the game itself. Legal outcomes, too, play a crucial role in these narratives, shaping public perception and individual futures, irrespective of the full truth. An acquittal, as Mark Chamura experienced, means that a person is legally found not guilty of the charges, or that the charges are dismissed. This typically occurs because the prosecution failed to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. While an acquittal legally clears a defendant, it doesn't always erase the court of public opinion, nor does it necessarily negate the moral questions that may linger, as Chamura himself acknowledged. The damaged reputation and career can be irreversible, even in the absence of a criminal conviction. Conversely, a plea deal, also known as a plea bargain, often seen in cases like Charles Grant's, is an agreement between a prosecutor and a defendant. Under this agreement, the defendant agrees to plead guilty or no contest to a particular charge in return for some concession from the prosecutor, such as a lesser charge or a recommendation for a lighter sentence. Plea deals allow both sides to avoid the uncertainties and costs of a full trial, but they can also be controversial, sometimes allowing individuals to avoid harsher penalties or, conversely, pressuring innocent defendants to accept a deal rather than risk a more severe sentence. For public figures, a plea deal often means a swifter resolution. The public record of the incident can still have lasting professional and personal consequences. These stories, therefore, are more than just a collection of unfortunate incidents involving famous athletes. They are complex tapestries woven with threads of personal struggle, systemic issues, societal pressures, and the harsh realities of justice and public perception. They compel us to look beyond the highlight reels and consider the full humanity of those we often elevate to mythic status. They remind us that the pressures faced by these individuals, both on and off the field, are immense, and the support systems available to them are not always adequate or effectively utilized. Understanding these underlying conditions and legal processes is vital to comprehending the profound impact such events have, not only on the lives of the athletes themselves, but also on their families, their former teams, and the broader society that watches